Good evening. This is Reflections. Now, I thought about this when I saw the date today, March 6th, and it's been 20 years now since witnessing Bruce Springsteen and the E Street Band live in Richmond, Virginia at the Richmond Coliseum. And this was a long tour. This was the Rising Tour. And this started in August of 2002. The very first show, I believe, was August the 7th in not Atlantic City, East Rutherford, New Jersey. Or is it New York? I think it's New Jersey. The second show of this tour was in Washington, D.C. And that happened to be the first show that I ever saw live of Springsteen. And this was a show that I went to with a good buddy and his old lady. And this was the first tour that this band had done since what is called the reunion tour of 1999 and 2000. So they were, only the second show of the tour, and it was a little bit, I would say, not rusty, but early enough to where they were trying to figure out kind of what worked with some of the new songs, because the album, The Rising, had come out in, I believe, June or July of 2002. So it had just come out. And they were kind of promoting it. Now, this was a great show, and I'll talk a little bit about it later, but this was a long tour because you had the first leg was a U.S. leg, which lasted from August to, I want to say maybe into the winter, and then there was European dates after that went into not very long into the winter. And then there was a second U.S. leg that was in, I think, January to maybe late January into mid-March. Then there were dates after that, I believe, in Australia, in Canada, kind of a short international tour, and then which lasted until like mid-July, and then a third U.S. leg, which was, I believe, late July into the beginning of October. There was really not much of breaks in between any of those legs. So in March, or I guess a little bit before that, late February of 2002. So I invited a young woman who was probably about 20, and she was going through a separation with her husband. So kind of one of those weird things that you would do when you're younger. And I invited her to come with me to the show. She said, "All right, great. I'll go." On the day of the show, she breaks it, and I came up with, I think it was kind of a lie about something, but so with like a few hours notice, I went with a backup plan. Hey, we've all done it. We've all been a backup plan, which was a really good friend who is a VCU student at the time, and she was a Bruce fan too, which was really cool. And I said, "Hey, I got another ticket. You want to go?" She's like, "Yeah, great." So we went, and well, it turns out that it was much better to hang out with her than the other person. So anyway, because we had just a blast at that show. This was, now there are some things that I wasn't happy about at this show was the fact that 9 of the 23 songs were from the Rising album. So it was a little weird that they were, I mean, that's like, do the math, like 40% songs from the Rising, which had been out almost a year. So I don't know why they were still trying to promote this album. It did very well. It seemed like at this point they'd be getting into just doing a great mix of old, new, just from all different periods. And I also didn't care much for, songs like Worlds Apart from the album, Empty Sky, which are both slow songs, and it's points where you kind of slow down the concert. I get that, but he had already accomplished that with a piano solo of For You from his first album back in 1972, Greetings from Asbury Park, a very, very nice rendition. And there was also a part at the end where the crowd was just going nuts, and it was during the final encore, and he just had the crowd by the palm of his hand, and he could have just knocked a home run out of the park, knocked the ball out of the park and done like Jungle Land, but he goes with Dancing in the Dark as the closer. So I thought it was a little bit of a bailout. But all of that being said, it was still, I've been to 3 of his shows, and I think this one was definitely the tightest show, even with, I didn't care much for the, I wasn't a huge fan of the set list. Still, the way they did it was just incredible, and they were at this point they're still in their early 50s. Clarence is like 60 at this point, but he was going strong. He was really going strong on this tour. Now fast forward to the 2009 working on a Dream tour, which would be his last, and he was really struggling on that tour. He had hip surgeries and he had other health problems, but on the Rising tour, he was very, very good. He was just as good as he had been on the Reunion tour. And the band was a smaller one. You had all the main people. Danny was still there. He died in 2008. Of course, Clarence was still there. Neil, Stevie, Gary, Max. And Patty, and then Susie, the violinist, was kind of not an official member yet, but she was a kind of a new member, and she did some parts there with the violin. But so it felt like a little smaller because they didn't have the E Street horns or the backup singers that they had on the 2014 High Hopes tour and on the current 2023 tour. I'm not even sure what they're calling that. Now, loyal Raider fans saw them, I think, twice on the Tunnel of Love tour, and they had the E Street horns going. I think that was the first one that they had the E Street horns, and maybe they had some backup singers in there too. Not that that's bad. I like that lineup and having that big sound, but there was something a little more close about the smaller band on this one. There was in the Coliseum, so the Richmond Coliseum, which any day now could be demolished. I mean, this could have been the last era where there was actually concerts being played at that Coliseum, but it had a real authentic feel to it because it's not tiny, but it's smaller than the Verizon Center where I'd seen them in DC back earlier in August of 2002, the place where the Capitals and I believe the Wizards play there too. But it's a little more open there. But at the Richmond Coliseum, it's just a little, you feel a little more of a closeness, more of a community. It's more like kind of like a house show kind of thing. You can hear people, the crowd a little better, like together. And I got that sense. I remember sitting there with my friend just, like before they came out, and they were late getting out there that night, but there was you could feel it even then, like even before the band came out on the stage. They were very, all the members were physically very well. They were, Bruce sweated a lot. He was, getting into things physically, moving around, and they just a lot of fun with kind of goofing around with Patty during one song, and then some facial theatrics with Stevie during I forget which song it was, but and then he had the dueling harmonica and sax on "She's the One," which was probably the highlight of the show. Another highlight was when his buddy, he had a guest come out, Bruce Hornsby and Robin Thompson for one song. Now, most people know who Bruce Hornsby is, a piano player who had some hits like The Way It Is and Mandolin Rain, but he was a surprise guest along with Thompson, who had been a band member of Springsteen back in the late 60s, and I believe maybe 1970, kind of in there before the E Street Band, and a band called Steel Mill. They were in together, and they played a lot back in that late 60s, early 70s era in Richmond, so which was kind of cool. And I think Thompson was from Richmond. They played a lot of shows at the VCU gym, which is no longer around, I don't believe. But so he talked a little bit about that, which was cool, like how it was great to be back in Richmond. So that was a real highlight. So those two came out and they did the song "Let's Go, Let's Go, Let's Go," which was a hit by Hank Ballard, who had died, I believe, a couple days before the show. If you don't know who Hank Ballard is, check him out. He wrote "The Twist," which was covered by Chubby Checker and went to #1, of course. And he had some other great songs like "Work With Me, Annie," and "Let's Go, Let's Go, Let's Go," and others. Hank Ballard and the Midnighters. Just a little plug right there. So, and then the back right there. So, yeah, Hank Ballard, and he had just died, and so it's great to see Bruce do a tribute to rock and roll. Great. And Hornsby was playing the accordion, which was kind of cool to see, and they really just got into it impromptu. And to this day, that remains the only song that from that show that is on YouTube. It's only audio. You don't see the video, but I'll have to check it out tonight and see if anything else has been uploaded from that show. I mean, this is a time where cell phones were not prominent, like video phones. I didn't have a phone then. I maybe had a camera, but I didn't take any pictures that night. So there's kind of a mystique about this show. It was really a fantastic time. I think he said something about Bush there at the towards the end, like, because we were just getting to the Iraq thing, and then he said something about let's all go out and get some burgers and fries, which I liked a lot. So just a fantastic time at that show. Now after this was the end of the second leg, and that was the other thing. They were really into it. They really found their groove as far as the cohesiveness and the just what songs to play. Even though I wasn't a big fan of it, but of the set list, it was still great. The way they performed it. But they went to Canada and New Zealand, Australia for a couple months after this. But the ending of this tour, which was the third leg in the U.S., they had some fantastic shows. He came back to FedEx Field in mid-September that year. I wanted to go to that show, but it just wasn't to be, one of those things. And that was the one where he led off the show. He opened the show with the song "Walk the Line," because Johnny Cash had died like the night a couple days before. I think he died on September 11th, so I think the show was like September 13th. You can look that up, but didn't go to that one. But I remember seeing the set list, and it was a very good set list. But the highlight of the third leg, the third U.S. leg, was the ending of the entire tour, which was, I think he had 3 straight dates at Shea Stadium. 3 nights in a row? No, it couldn't have been 3 nights in a row. Maybe separated, every other night. But I have a bootleg of one of those, and they were real. It wasn't like heavy rising. They did rising songs, but there were longer shows. They had some special guests like who was the guy, like Gary U.S. Bonds came out, and they did Twist and Shout one night. Bob Dylan came out and did Highway 61 Revisited one night. Even then Mets pitcher Al Leiter, champ, came out on stage, and like, I forget which song, but he was playing guitar with them at Shea Stadium for one of the songs. But those were some incredible performances, those last 3 dates, and that would be the last time that the E Street Band would be together until the 2007 Magic Tour, which I had some issues with. There were some problems, but there were, of course, a lot of highlights. But a lot of people say the Rising Tour was the last great tour of the E Street Band. Maybe not. Definitely the last great one with Clarence, may he rest in peace, and Danny. But it was a show at the Richmond Coliseum that it would be the last time that this band would ever play at the Richmond Coliseum. I don't think it'll ever happen again. Now, Bruce did come back in, I think, 2005 on his solo Devils and Dust tour, which I didn't go to. But I remember after this show on March 6th, 2003, seeing the the young lady that had gotten, broken the date, and said, and I said, well, you missed a great, excellent show. And I told her, I went with someone else. And then another person that I was friends with had gone too, not with me, but she was there with her husband. She said, and she was telling the woman, like, wow, you really missed out. And that's why I think it was a lie, because the way she reacted to that, like, oh, like, she didn't talk about her excuse. It was like, I kind of blew it, but that's life, But definitely, I don't think it was my favorite show. Maybe the best performance that I've seen. It was short. I mean, like I said, 23 songs. So fairly short, but just very nicely compact. It may have, I don't think it was even 3 hours, maybe a little under 3 hours. The one I saw during the River Tour of 2016 in DC was exactly 4 hours, and that was incredible. But nothing like seeing, of course, you have to go back to the 70s, like mid 70s, late 70s, to see really the prime years. And I've seen some of those full performances, and there's nothing like seeing that. But very, very nice for a band that was mostly in their early 50s, really fit, and just really feeling it at that point in the tour. But definitely do not have any regrets about seeing that one. But man, hard to believe, 20 years since then, and kind of hard to believe they're still out there performing. So definitely a night worth remembering. So thinking about that Tunnel of Love tour that Loyal saw, there were some changes in that. I've seen some of the clips of that, and that was outstanding too. And that was a much different feel from the Born in the USA, because the tone was much different, a little more serious. The album, the messages were not as celebratory as Born in the USA, and they had some changes in the tour lineup. For example, I talked about the E Street Horns, the backup singers. Patty was more involved now, more in the forefront, and Stevie was gone for that tour. He had left, and Niels was really filling the void as the main lead guitar player along with Bruce. But wish I could have seen that tour, 87, 88. There's a lot of great shticks from that one, and I liked a lot of the songs from that one. But yep, the Rising tour, definitely a memorable one. This was the LP. They were finding out a lot of the ways the songs worked well live, and then they would add more ways in future tours to make them exciting, like Waiting on a Sunny Day. He started during either the High Hopes tour or in 2014, or the River tour in 2016, where he would invite a young kid up on the stage to like sing. And there's a lot of clips of that, which I thought that was a great idea. And there's a really great one with these like two, look like maybe early college or late high school kids that come up there, and they're really getting into the song. But yeah, a lot of fun. March 6th, 2003. All I'm gonna say is, had some booze that night. So, and I think we had some burgers and fries too. I think I remember doing that on the way back. But kind of nice having it right there in Richmond, so you didn't have to drive a long way back. Yeah, I think we stopped at Wendy's on the way for a Frosty. Perfect way to end a Springsteen show. All right, if you have any comments or about, if you've seen him before, let me know in the comments section. Thanks for listening to the video. I know it's someone's a little boring, but just thought I'd reflect, because it's just amazing. Like it's been that long, and still have a lot of great memories of it. So, all right, guys, thanks. Peace, tramps like us.